and thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, eLearning Coach Community to the Rescue. We've got 4 rock star veteran eLearning coaches who are going to share some of their experiences and knowledge with you guys today, so you are in for a real treat. Just the presentation alone, the visuals of it is pretty cool. So we will get started with them in just a few minutes. I'm going to do some really quick housekeeping stuff that needs to be done, and then I'll get to them as quickly as possible. So if you're hearing my voice, that means that you got connected to the audio, which is awesome. I am Mary Carnahan. I'm the eLearning Resource Specialist with the Indiana Department of Education, Office of eLearning. And again, we're happy to have you join us today for this eLearning Lab webinar. I muted all of the lines as you guys came in, so please keep your lines muted. That will minimize the background noise so that we can hear all of our presenters clearly. As we go through the call today, please use your chat window to ask questions. You should see that chat window, I believe, over to the right of your screen. And make sure that when you use that, you select everyone from that Send To drop-down. It defaults to only send questions to me. So we want everybody to be able to see those. Also, use that to ask questions, but also as like a back-channel conversation piece. So share ideas with your the other participants in the call, because you're all in the trenches, you're all doing this together. So use each other as a resource over there in the chat box. And I typically am asked at some point, I do record these webinars. This one says it's recording right now. As long as we have no technology issues, as I go along, I will have that posted probably early next week. So if you have to leave early, or if you want to hear something again, I will have that shared next week. You can link to that from our website from the professional development section. So this is part of our the professional development piece that we do. We've got one webinar scheduled as of right now. It's Leading in the Digital Age. That is next month, October 17th. And we've got a couple of technology administrative leaders who are going to be sharing in that webinar. We're really excited to have them on the call. We'll also be scheduling a webinar for early October and still working on that topic, so watch out for information about that. That'll be shared on Twitter and our other communication feeds. And Twitter chats, if you are unfamiliar with our Twitter chats, we invite you to join the conversation that is ongoing using that #INELearn hashtag, but specifically Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have ongoing Twitter chats with a variety of different topics and hosts. And this week we have Our Steps in Digital Citizenship with it, which is a chat with digital principal Amy Haven. So join us for that if that sounds like something in which you would be interested in. And another piece of professional development that we have going on right now is our book club. We typically do 3 book clubs a year, and we started one last week. We are reading Master the Media by Julie Smith, and we are also really excited to have had her join in our conversation last week. We had the author right there with us. So that is ongoing. It's not too late to join in. So if you are looking for some professional development and some PGP points, this is a great opportunity. You can join in late, and that is the website where you can get to that. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our awesome eLearning coach community leaders who have agreed to join us today. We've got Tim Wilhelmus from Evansville, Kline from Delphi, Michele Eaton from MSD of Wayne Township, and Diana Gill from East Porter County Schools. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and they will take it away from here.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, yes, Tim.
Excellent, cool. I guess we can go to the next slide, actually. So I'm Tim Wilhelmus. I'm an Innovation, Curriculum, and Technology Specialist for the Evansville Vanderburg School Corporation. And if you want to connect with me, you can always catch me on Twitter at Tim Wilhelmus, and I'd be glad to connect and collaborate with you. So there's that. And next slide. So what I wanted to talk about was, from a coach's perspective, building your why and using that as a basis for increasing your relevance and your reach, your ability to move the work forward, if you will. I think we're going to share this slideshow with you all eventually. And the only reason I have that video there in the lower corner is that's sort of the starting point, right, of that idea, is that TED Talk there. And I'll give you an idea about what it means to start with why and why that matters. When they gave me my first hero character, it was not Iron Man, so I did some work to make sure that I was Iron Man because he's awesome and I'm on Team Star. So there you go. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so defining your why is really about coming up with the justifications for the work. And you know, I think a lot of times in education, sometimes we just find ourselves in a model where we've been kind of given marching orders and we just go because that's who we are. We're really good at problem solving, moving forward. But taking time to lead the charge in such a way that people want to follow really matters, because especially in the ed tech world, sometimes we can get wrapped up in the idea of, you know, well, of course it's valuable. It's technology and it's awesome and everybody ought to do it. And if they would just do it, then we would all be happy. And why won't they do that? And I think sometimes it takes stepping back from sort of our predisposition and realizing that we have to sell the product, and the way you sell the product is by telling a story, and the way you tell that story is by grounding people back in that sort of why. And so for me, a way to look at that is to remember that people react emotionally, but they also react logically, and they need both of those pieces to be moved forward. So, for example, you know, if we're wanting to move our work forward as education technology leaders, it's important for us to give people something that they can believe in, right? Something that they can emotionally feel, such as, you know, how important it is to have safer kids, or how important it is to create engaging lessons, or how important it is for there to be fairness. You know, those are things we react to emotionally, and that matters. But on the other side of it is that people who aren't comfortable with change also are looking for logical arguments. It's not going to be just enough to tap into an emotional response, but it's a lot of times it also requires me saying, well, yeah, that makes sense. I get it. I get it because I can point at these things. And sometimes that means pulling up data. And if you have access to great data, such as Brightlight's Clarity data or things like that that you can point at, that helps. But also it can just be making that sort of logical argument that we all get. You know, it doesn't make sense, for example, for us to say that that we don't need technology in the classroom because these kids are being given technology and they're living that life outside of our classrooms. And so if we want to be relevant in this world, we need to be relevant on the terms of the world. So that's a logical argument. It's not one that I'm necessarily tapping into my emotion on, but it's one that might move me. And so, like, part of thinking about what your why is then is just kind of go back to that idea of it having two parts, that emotional part and that logical part. Okay, next slide. Another thing that is really important is that, you know, my why is my why, and of course I believe it, and of course it makes absolute sense. And if I start from my own individual perspective, I'm not going to move a whole lot of people. I'll move the people who are drinking the Kool-Aid with me, but I'm not going to move people who have a different perspective. And so part of being really good at moving the work forward and advocating for good education technology is looking at the world through the lens of the people you serve, right? And so if I'm working with a teacher, I'm going to look at the world and talk about educational technology with that teacher from that teacher's perspective. If I'm working with an assistant principal dean, or if I'm working with the superintendent, I'm going to be looking through their lens so that I'm speaking to them on terms that they can buy into. And everybody's perspective is important and unique in that regard. And so I think it's really important to spend time thinking about how different people see this work. And since everybody is different, I mean, you can't say all teachers look at teaching and learning the same way. You can't say that all principals do. You really have to get down to that granular individual level and think about that why in terms of what are the levers that are going to move this individual person forward. And so it's not about having just one why. In some ways, it's about having lots of whys and being able to look at all the different facets of it. I think I made this mistake early in my career as a coach, because I saw the potential there as a teacher who had used quite a bit of technology even before we went one-to-one, and I couldn't quite get my brain around how other people didn't see what I saw. And it took time to sit down and think about what the experiences of other teachers are, and to use their concerns as part of how I framed the work that I did with them. And so empathy was a big lesson to learn for me. All right, so next slide. And finally, because each of us is unique and we each have our own viewpoint and we each have our own work to do within the whole, it's also about aligning your why, your argument for the work with that of the larger team. And I think, you know, when we first went one-to-one, and I think I can speak for other school districts, a lot of times ed tech groups get sort of siloed, and so the work that they are doing can be excellent, but if it's siloed away from, say, the curriculum directors, or away from the data people, or away from, you know, the discipline and behavior people, that kind of thing, even you might be doing great work, but you're doing it in this space that isn't reaching outward. And so one of the greatest lessons I think I've learned in the last few years is to actually spend time learning the why of other people inside of that district and being part of that conversation of the whole group and actively pursuing the opportunity to do that. So you're sort of forming this team of people, each with their own distinct maybe talents and ideas about how to move work forward, but having those conversations and coming together to start to speak the same language. Because once you can break through that wall, and it's entirely worth the extra effort to do that, then all of a sudden you realize you're really not speaking different languages so much as you're using different words to describe the same thing. And when you can have the same conversation and kind of share a collective lens, you start to move the work forward much, much, much faster. And, you know, as an example of this, you know, if you're working on, say, digital citizenship, one of the things that you may find is that the curriculum people have ideas about how you talk about digital citizenship within the curriculum, and the discipline and behavior people have ideas about, you know, positive expectations and about how you address behavior, and the superintendent may have ideas about how, about how this potentially affects your finances through E-rate and those types of things. But all of these things are part of one larger conversation, and when you can build that team around a set of whys, then you have an opportunity to really grow and become part of the greater work and have more influence. And I guess that's what I have to say about that. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Kyle.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? I hope. All right. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kyle Kline. I'm the Math Curriculum and Technology Integration Specialist at Delphi Community Junior Senior High School. That could be the longest title, the longest school name, possibly as a combination. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @MrKline_EdTech. I love to chat and collaborate with people all the time online as much as possible. That's probably my biggest place that I actually learn something, and I'm lucky to be part of this webinar, and I really appreciate Mary letting me be the thorn between all these roses with Tim, Michelle, and Diana here, because I'm probably the rookie of the group, as I'm just starting my 3rd year at Delphi. So this is still a new role to me, but I guess we'll go into why I really like this job. And so, Mary, if you'd switch to this next slide, please. Big part for me is just like the importance of relationships and support. So when I was younger, after an unsuccessful freshman year in college, I had always told my dad, hey, I'm going to make a bunch of money. I want to be a vet. And so I didn't know that when you went to college that they really required a lot of you when you're there. And so my dad, who's an educator, afterwards, we had a conversation where he talked most of the time, and he had said, let's think about your major here. You're very good. You're always good with people, and we want you to, I want you to be successful in the future here, but I want you to really look at education. And so I'm like, okay, well, why do you think that? And he said, well, you're really good with relationships. And so whenever I think about coaching, that kind of takes me back to that conversation with my father, where, one of the strengths of being a coach is making sure that you have good relationships with your teachers, because there needs to be more of a conversation piece between you and your teacher instead of just you telling them what to do. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the first option I would say is that make sure you show people you care. So my background is math. Like I have kind of a dual part where I'm a math coach, but I'm also a technology coach within the middle school and high school. And so a lot of people think that because I have the math background that I don't necessarily care or know much about their background and their curriculum. And so I always tell them I'm a self-professed nerd, that when I was in high school, I liked about all subjects, including AP English, I think is what I put down for one of my favorite classes back in the day. And to hear somebody say that you're a math person that is likes AP English, they kind of laugh at that. So you really need to make sure that you show the teachers their content matters, and you want to help them, with their content, and how can you make their content not necessarily just more digital, but also how can you make it more engaging for the students? You always need to listen first, and being still kind of new, I spent a lot of my first year not necessarily trying to help teachers and say, hey, you should try this and you should try that. But I spent a whole lot of time listening to them. And I think that's like we all have our own success stories, but a real quick short one with mine is I was working with a former football coach, social studies teacher, and the whole first year, and he's a big, gruff guy, and they're like, oh, hey, good luck with him, and you'll never get him to try something new. And so I did not force anything upon him, and I just spent the entire first year just getting to know him and getting to know that I actually care about his curriculum. I care about what he's doing. So, and then I care about his concerns. So I just want to know, what can I do to help you out? And so we spent that year not really trying anything new in his class, but just having small conversations here and there. When you do have those conversations, the next bullet would be, what can I do to make this easier or better? And so I task teachers when we have our conversations, what is a topic that you would either like to improve, or what is a topic that you really don't like teaching? And so what does I really like to, what we like to have that conversation, because like, gosh, I really dislike talking about the certain topic. I said, okay, let's find ways to make it more engaging, not just for you, but for your students. And so that working with that relationship with the teachers, I think that lets them try something new and try to make a topic a little more engaging for their kids, because if kids can tell if a teacher is disinterested. And so I think that if you can get a teacher to try something a little bit different, I always tell them, like, hey, even if you don't like teaching it, maybe you can fake it just enough that the kids might actually like it. The last bullet on this slide is make that teacher feel like they are your priority, and they are. And so I don't have near as many teachers as what Tim or Michele may have, but every teacher that I have, when I am with them, I make sure that they understand they are my priority. So I really focus on trying to help them in the present, but then also if I can't answer a question or if I can't find a solution, I let them know I'm going to research it, and I'm going to help them out as much as possible. If I can't find a possible solution, I will let them know that there is a solution, I just can't find it, or if there isn't a solution, I'll let them know that too. We really like to, and I think they appreciate that, because I know there are some people that may be in a coaching position that may not follow up. And so I think follow-up is a big part of showing teachers that you really care about their interests and their background and their curriculum. Next slide, please. Okay, always encourage. And I know everybody's probably seen, fail. It's their first attempt in learning. And I think the teachers need to show that with their students, that it's okay to fail. And I think that that's also great that for a coach to be there for a teacher when they are trying something new. And if they fail, it is okay. You need to encourage that teacher, hey, it's fine. All right, we're going to find a solution, or maybe it wasn't as big of a failure as what you may believe. And so I did choose this specific quote on the side of, why do we follow Bruce, so we can learn to pick ourselves back up. I'm a huge Batman fan, and so when Diana made me the Batman guy, I was like, yes, finally, I get to be cool for once. And so always encourage teachers that if there is failure, there's still some light at the tunnel. I like to push teachers out of their comfort zone, but then I also like to be there to support them. And we keep going. We talk about the goods and the bad. So you always want to give encouragement. If we go to the next slide, please. And there we go. Being visible. If you've ever watched the old Batman and Robin, I thought this was a pretty funny little picture on the bottom, because, Batman and Robin, they're always running somewhere. In this case, they're running in the middle of the street. So that's where I started thinking, hey, this is a great little visual, because you always want to be visible. There are some coaches that I know that have an office, and they are never out of their office. So my claim to fame, I like to say, is some people are like, hey, I tried calling you, and I like to tell them I haven't been in my office all day because I've been out speaking with teachers. I've been out in the hallways, during passing periods, talking to students, giving them high fives. but mainly just talking to teachers, building that relationship, and letting them know that, hey, I'm here if you need me. Okay, grab me in the hallway. If you want me to stop back by during your prep period, before school, after school, I'll be happy to do that. And that's where I also put, you can't just fly around in Wonder Woman's invisible jet, because if you are on the hallway, they will hopefully find you and track you down. I always like people to make sure that they send me an email, or if we talk about something, they're like, hey, can we talk later or something? I'm like, okay, please send me an email, because I'll make sure I see it, because probably between one school to the next, I will probably forget. And so, but that's just part of being visible. I mean, those are things that when you're out helping teachers, you want to make sure that they see you and you're there for them. And that fits into the second bullet where I kind of talked about before. If teachers try new things, offer up that you can be there to help co-teach or even just be in the room when the teachers try different things, whether it's technology or whether it's curricular. I think teachers having that extra help, the extra person there, just in case something may go a little awry, and you may or may not do anything but to really help them, but you are there, and you're kind of their comfort blanket. I also like to do the random check-ins. I would say that the random check-ins are great. So I'll just pop in a classroom that wasn't even asked to be there. One teacher was doing a Kahoot, so I just hopped in and jumped in and played a Kahoot with the class. And it was kind of fun because the kids saw it was a little fun, and the teacher's like, hey, that's kind of fun. I might have you back in again, and maybe you start from the beginning and see if you can beat the kids, if you're actually smarter than the 7th grader or not. So I think relationships are just so important. As teachers, we know that the relationship is so important to get students comfortable in your classrooms. And I think in the coaching role, relationships are just the peak opportunity for you to get working with educators, so that way they feel more comfortable with the kids and they can engage the kids, and they can also, improve, let's say, I don't want to say improve their classroom, but, maybe try something new and push them out of their comfort zone. So my last quote here is, everything is better when we stick together. That's part of your relationships, and I hope everybody understands that that is such an important part of being a coach. So I think that's it for me. I'm going to pass this over to Michele.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Michele Eaton. I am the Director of Virtual and Blended Learning for the MSD of Wayne Township. There is my Twitter handle. So just like the other guys said, please tweet me, reach out. We are all better together, and that's what I love so much about this eLearn community, is that we are very connected and we are constantly sharing. So please connect with me, and I'd love to brainstorm to talk about coaching and specifically how we can move some of that online. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is personalizing professional development. Do you want to move to the next slide for me? Thank you. And this is really important on multiple levels, and this has been a passion project for me. So on the next slide, I want to talk to you about the why. So for me in particular, being an MSD of Wayne Township, it's a relatively large district with pretty unique situations. So where I work primarily is with the online high school, with the blended programs around the district, so we're all about flexibility. And in many cases, our teachers not only are in different buildings across the district, but work in different districts around the state, and then sometimes different countries around the world, especially in our fully online high school. So I have a very specific challenge that some of you probably can relate to on a specific level, and that's that I serve this diverse group of teachers and students, and sometimes just getting together after school is not as easy as it could be in some situations. So if you are a coach that serves multiple schools and you want to do something across schools, sometimes it's not always super feasible to make that happen. So that's that's one reason that this is really important. One thing you might be thinking is that you have all of these students with devices, and a lot of the times we are telling teachers about next generation learning models, how they need to change their teaching, but then we go to PD and it looks a lot like that second picture on my slide, where it's a talking head in the front of the room, and then we leave at the most critical point of implementation, and that's when the teachers go back to actually implement in the classroom. And so for me, moving some of my professional development online and focusing on personalization helped prevent that isolated PD session from happening, because I wasn't seeing transfer. And I definitely wasn't able to model those next generation learning strategies with my teachers. So then I couldn't really expect any of that to happen in the classroom when we left the PD session. And finally, the other reason this is really important for me is because a lot of the professional learning that I lead happens to be voluntary. So I don't know if you guys want to throw in the chat if any of you guys are facing that, where a lot of the times as coaches, we don't have the maybe clout that a principal does, or the ability to say, you have to show up at this staff meeting, or and a lot of the work that I do anyway has to be on a voluntary basis. So when I started really thinking about changing the way that I did professional learning, I wanted it to be authentic and meaningful, and the best way to do that would be to personalize the experience for our teachers. So it helped me be present, whether that was virtually or face-to-face, for transfer to happen. That allowed me to model what that looks like for students. I think that that's really important for our teachers. And then it also helped me really meet teachers' needs right where they were, helped them have buy-in to what we were learning. And so it kind of helped me solve that voluntary professional learning hurdle that many of us have to deal with. So the next slide, the first thing that you have to decide is where a lot of this is going to happen. And for me, specifically, when I have teachers all over a district in multiple buildings, or in different places around the globe, in my case, having a centralized online environment was important for us. So for a lot of the personalization that's going to occur, a lot of it happens within our learning management system. There are lots of places that this kind of work can happen. If you have an LMS, I suggest you build a course in your LMS. It's important to replicate what's happening with students as much as possible. So if you want teachers to be using an LMS for personalized learning, then you should probably provide personalized learning and create that online environment. So this is just an example with our virtual school. We have this hub, basically, where all of our resources go. Any sort of online PD, even recordings of face-to-face PD will go in here. If I have tutorials or resources, if the principal has announcements or information, they all know that this happens in this centralized location. And this does not happen just out of nowhere. It's really important that you teach teachers how to learn in this kind of environment. For most of us, this is not natural. We did not grow up with an internet where we were contributing and sharing, and we were part of a community. So you can't just create a group or a course in your LMS, throw the teachers in and expect magic to happen. This took about a year of really nurturing teachers and teaching them what it meant to share in an informal setting. That helped me build the foundation for where we are now. So when I would have a teacher email me with a question, I would encourage them to actually copy-paste that question into our discussion board so that others could respond and that I would share my ideas there. And I would, just like I would in an email, except that they would get a lot more feedback. Or if I had a teacher that would send me a resource, instead of me taking it and forwarding it out to all the teachers, or even me putting it in our workroom, for a long time there, I would encourage them to go ahead and post that themselves. So again, that scaffolding, that kind pushing to teach them how they can be a contributing member of this online community. This was the first step for me, because then it allowed all of the online work, personalized online work that we did, to be successful. So it didn't happen overnight. Be patient. I think that's really important for you all to understand. Let's go to the next slide. And one one way that you can utilize an online environment in some way is to blend your professional development. At our high school, at our flagship high school, we have what are called innovation centers. And what's key here is that they are completely led by teachers. It is not very often that I'm even allowed to present at these. So they're teacher-developed topics, teacher-led PD sessions that go every quarter, and then all of the teachers in the building get to sign up for what innovation centers they want to go to each quarter. 2 mornings of every week are dedicated to the innovation centers, and nothing else is scheduled at the same time. And the teachers are encouraged to set them up so that one day is online, and the teacher leader is available in their classroom to answer questions during the online work portion. Excuse me. And teachers work at their, at their own time during that day, and then the next day they'll get together for more hands-on work. This has been really powerful, and we've been able to see a lot of transfer because teachers are empowered to lead about things that are important to them. So we're seeing standards-based grading and PBL and different types of technology integration happening. Teachers are self-selecting where they want to attend, which always gives you automatic buy-in. And so it's teachers leading teachers. And then my role there when we're doing, like when I have a teacher that's leading something that has to do with technology, is to support them in their planning and then to not take center stage and to let them lead. So this has been a really remarkable model that has been super successful for us at one of our high schools. Another example is on the next slide, and that is Genius Hour. We did this with our lead technology teachers. Basically, this is a modified Genius Hour. We had them self-select topics that they were interested in that they wanted to implement in their own classroom. We gave them some suggested topics. We encouraged them to work in groups or collaboratively with a partner. And then we scheduled out the year so that we gave them time to do research and then present that research to the group. We gave them time to actually try implementing what they were researching, so whether that was flipping a lesson or creating a makerspace, STEM in the design process. We had a lot of different ideas, a lot of different explorations happening. We gave them time to implement, and then at the end, their culminating project was to, in their groups, create some sort of resource that could be shared on our Technology Resource Center with other teachers, explaining what it is they learned, examples from their own classroom, and tips for success. So not only were they able to follow these passion projects, actually implement, and part of the PD was designed so that they would go and implement what they learned, but then they were creating resources that could then be shared so that that learning could grow. This was a really fantastic kind of personalized PD plan, and all of it happened online. We would have online check-ins via our webinar software, which is Adobe Connect, but again, they're free versions of those kind of platforms that you can use. And it was really loose with just these endpoints, these due dates for certain pieces. And that was really successful. So it was pretty exciting work to see teachers learning about their own interests and then being there to support that learning. The next slide is my latest project I've been so excited about. Has been a true personalized experience for our virtual school teachers, and that is with the use of individualized learning plans. My goal was to move all of our teachers into a PD that was completely designed by them. To start that out, I started with having the teachers learn about learner profiles, what it meant to think about what your own strengths, needs, interests, and constraints were as a learner. This is something I stole from some friends of mine in Denver Public Schools. I want to give them credit. They've done this with their staff and students. So we spent some time talking about learner profiles. I gave them some templates to play around with and to identify, what worked for them as a learner, what kept them from being successful, what their interests were. And then I told them these plans, these profiles are not for me to see. They did not turn them in. I said, this is a tool for you to advocate for yourself as a learner, because that's really what personalized learning is about. Differentiation is what the teacher does to make changes for the student, and personalized learning, personalization is what the student does to advocate for themselves as a learner. And so that's what this was all about. Absolutely, I'm happy to share out. As soon as I'm done talking, I'll throw some links in the chat to share with you the templates that I use. But once we had this, if you go to the next slide, I had them use this profile to really reflect on themselves as a learner. And then within our LMS, we have individualized learning plans as a feature set. This is something I think you could do in Google Sheets if you wanted. I think it's nice that it's in our LMS, but I don't think that's a make or break it. But basically, and this has evolved from the first time I did it. The first time I did it, it was kind of the Wild West. They could add anything they wanted to their PD plan, and I think it went well. And then I got some feedback from the teachers this past summer about what worked for them, how they like to see it evolve, and we reined it in a little bit. But essentially, they have a plan for every quarter, and every quarter has a topic based on our school improvement plan. So that's the same for everybody. So this quarter right now, we're talking about personalized learning. Everyone's required to go to an opening webinar where we introduce the topic, but then from there, they have choices about how they want to learn the rest of the content, whether it's through an online mini course, reading articles and doing a discussion activity, creating elements for their online course, or something else that they have decided to do. So here in this example on the screen, this teacher has kind of selected their own little passion project plus the mini course and the webinar. They can, so they had full control over that task list. They just mark where they are in the process, whether it's completed, ongoing, not started yet. They have a column where they can leave notes, and then in the mentor note column, myself and Sarah Wilking, who's on this webinar right now, and the principal can all leave notes back and forth, and we get notifications every time. I have organized kind of what everyone's doing using color-coded Post-its on at my desk. That's kind of how I think. But that's the toughest part, is me staying organized and then helping to facilitate those learning opportunities throughout the year. But this has been really great because this is a completely voluntary PD system, and we have had so much participation. When teachers can say, this is what I want to work on, this is how I want to learn it, and this is when I'm going to do it this quarter, it's really powerful, which I think after personalizing PD in this way, now we can have real conversations about what does this look like for students when you put them in the driver's seat. And then as a coach, as a professional development staff member, I can better have conversations. If I hadn't done this and I were talking about personalized learning with these teachers, I'd be talking about something that I have absolutely no experience with at all. And that doesn't build trust. That doesn't make me a very reliable source either. So this has been a really powerful journey for me. If we go to the last slide, kind of the next step for me is just to continue listening to the teachers. This is how the ILP program has grown, and how I've seen more success is that I've had to kind of swallow my own pride and stand in front of a group of 60 teachers and say, all right, tell me what we could do better. What is not working for you, and what would you like to see this look like? And by really being reflective and listening, that's how I determine what we do next. And so that's been one of the more powerful things that, I think that's one of the more powerful tips that I can give you, is to really involve the teachers. Talk at them, get their feedback on how you can best help them, and then design specifically for them. So that's what's for me next. I'm just going to keep having those open, honest conversations with the teachers and continue to design PD that is very personalized to them and their needs and their interests. So that's it for me, and I'm going to pass the baton to Diana Gill.
Hi guys, can everyone hear me okay? All right, hopefully you can hear me. All right, awesome. So my name is Diana Gill. I am the instructional technology coach for East Porter County Schools up in Northwest Indiana. And I am the sole coach for the district. And I work with teachers at 3 middle schools and 3 high schools. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today kind of speaks to being that sole coach and why partnering with the different building level administrators is so important. I can skip to the next slide, please. Okay, so today as I talk about this, I'm going to try to highlight why this is so important and then share some suggestions and successes that I've had in building those relationships and partnering with all of our building level leaders. Next slide, please. So the first is a shared vision, and Tim kind of hinted at a lot of this stuff earlier in the webinar. But a shared vision really matters because it helps to continue the message that you have as a coach, and it also gets everyone using the same language. So in a lot of schools, definitely in my case, a lot of coaches are in the same position where you might be one or maybe there's a couple coaches for an entire district, and it starts to feel like you are carrying the vision of tech integration completely on your own. And while coaches are awesome and we are superheroes in our own right, one person can't really do that for the vision to be successful. So if the vision of a school and of tech integration is shared, then that culture can really start to shift a lot more naturally. So that's why, it's the #1 reason why having that partnership with building level admin is so important. So yeah, we all have our different roles, but we do have one common goal. And this partnership can help support the vision of the school or the district in a way that's more true to what technology integration should look like. If building leaders and district leaders have visions that don't necessarily include tech integration, and if tech integration is working separately and has its own separate vision, then people are ultimately getting mixed messages, and tech integration becomes a separate thing and just another thing. And as coaches, we know that that's not what we want. It's supposed to be integral to all of the initiatives in a building or in a district. And so if we're working under this shared vision, we can all continue to learn and grow together. And the more often that that's happening, we start to use that same language, then the more clearly the vision can be carried out when we're all talking about the same concepts using the same words. So how can we make this happen? First of all, a shared vision has to be believed in by all. It's one thing for you to know the vision and be able to repeat it, but it's another thing to have a true understanding of the vision and the plans, and to really believe in the vision that you're supporting. And so that really happens when the leaders, coaches, and administrators alike build visions together. The second piece of that is having a common language helps promote that shared vision. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So right now, I'm really trying to work to shift the idea that what we're doing with all of our professional development is not training, but it's instructional coaching. And so when I'm talking with teachers, especially when I'm talking with building level administrators, I try really hard to never use the word training ever, because I don't want, when building level administrators speak to their teachers, I don't want them to use that word either. I want them to use the word coaching. And so I will continue to say coaching, coaching, coaching in every interaction that I have, and my hope is that the building level administrators will use that same language and help me continue and carry that message. Because, you know, in a situation where you only have 1 or 2 coaches for an entire district, you have to rely on other people to also be a mouthpiece for that vision and that message. The last couple of years, we worked really hard to stop using the word blocked and use the word filtered instead. Because when people were talking about things being blocked, we weren't really talking about things being blocked. It was actually that things were being filtered. And so using that right language helps everyone have a clear picture over like why the decisions were being made. So that's just a couple of examples of why having a shared vocabulary really helps carry the vision forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so teamwork. As we work toward a shared vision, we have to do so as a team. And in a building, every single person has their unique role, but we're all supporting students. And the role of a coach is part of that team. And if there happens to be a weak link between coaches and administrators, then ultimately it's our teachers and our students who aren't being supported. With each of those unique roles, everyone has a different perspective to bring to the table. And I'll use the word or the phrase "eat at the table" a lot because I think that's where it happens. It's important that leaders, coaches, and building level leaders together should consider how they are working together. Everyone should have a seat at the table when making district decisions. So I'm very fortunate in my corporation. when there's a district level administrator meeting or if there's a secondary principal meeting, I'm always invited to come to those and have conversations about what it is I'm doing and listen to everyone else, have conversations about what the work that they're doing, and so we can all help each other work on everyone's different goals. And sometimes, you know, the coach will be able to, well, I'll be able to offer a perspective that might support what a building level leader is trying to do and vice versa. So it's really helpful to have those opportunities to work as a team in support of that shared vision. So some other ways we can make that teamwork happen. Coaches can let administrators know that they are there for them as well in a lot of different capacities. So the first thing I think about is that technology integration factor in teacher evaluation. So I remember when we first began looking at that part of the teacher evaluation, it became really clear that all of the building level evaluators had a really different idea of what we were supposed to be looking for, and I say we, but I mean the building level administrators. Coaches don't evaluate in my district. But it was clear that everyone had a different idea about like what it was that made effective tech integration on a teacher evaluation. And that wasn't necessarily about picking specific items to look for, but it was more about giving admin confidence that they would be able to use that evaluation as a tool to support teacher growth in tech integration. And so that conversation continues today as we continue to grow as a district with that. But what that looks like can support administrators as they give teachers feedback. So in an evaluation process, the administrator really becomes a coach for the teacher in all of those instructional pieces. And so the technology coach then can come in and say, hey, if you see a need for me to directly support the teacher as a result of your evaluation, I'm there, or if you'd rather me help indirectly, I can offer suggestions and resources to the administrator who can then pass that coaching along to the teacher. Moving on, another suggestion is to work as a team and support other building initiatives and maybe initiatives outside of just instruction. So this year we're offering G Suite training. I know I'm using the word training, but that's really what this is this time, to office staff. So they're part of the team. The central office staff and the office administrative staff in every building, they're part of our team that supports our administrators, they support our teachers, and in a lot of cases, they aren't included in any professional development. So going along with that theme, everyone in a school is part of the team, and administrators can benefit from coaches having that mindset. Depending on how your school or district implements coaching, we know that at times there is the need for some admin support. And Michele talked about a lot of her professional development being voluntary. In my district, we have both voluntary and required professional development, and teachers are required to work with coaches in my district. And so there are definitely pros and cons to that, but sometimes forced collaboration can be kind of awkward, right? So working with a coach can make people feel vulnerable, and opening up your classroom to someone new can make you feel vulnerable. And real talk, not everyone wants to work with a technology coach. So in situations that I feel like I need support, I know that I can go to the building administrators for advice about how to help a specific teacher. And then administrators can also reach out to teachers and encourage them to reach out for coaching. I guess essentially what I'm saying is that the administrators can help sell the benefits of coaching. Coaches can collaborate on other building PD activities, either directly or behind the scenes. So I'll say to a principal, hey, I know you're talking about this topic at your next PLC. I'd be happy to collaborate with you or partner with you on presenting this, depending on what the topic is. And another big success is working with administrators to talk a lot about filtering, privacy, internet safety, online behavior, letting the building administrators know that you're there as support about all of those different things, talking about SEPA and COPA and E-rate so that everyone on the team has a clear understanding of it. So when our principals are speaking to parents, they can feel confident in explaining our filtering decisions that we make at school, and letting the administrators know that you can be there as a consultant. A lot of times they'll bring me in as they make decisions about assistive technology, or maybe when they're meeting to revise an IEP, if there's a technology solution that needs to be part of that discussion, they can reach out to me about that at any time. Next slide. All right, moving on to modeling. So I'm going to be talking about why it's so important for coaches to work with building and level administrators to model. We know that coaches are there to help our teachers, but teachers definitely aren't the only ones that are in need of support. Just like the teachers, building admin, they're all starting at different places, and it's important that we also meet them where they are. Some of our building administrators are social media enthusiasts, and they promote being connected to their staff. Other building admins, they're more reluctant, possibly tech fearful, especially because they're usually the ones that are handling the discipline in those unfortunate cases when students do make poor decisions with technology. So working with building level administrators to support their own modeling of tech integration goes a long way, because I think George Couros talks a lot about taking risks. Yeah, that's great, but openly taking risks is really where the modeling comes in. In addition, coaches talk a lot about how what we do is not centered around technology. But in the trenches of what we do, especially in districts where coaching is kind of a new thing, in Northwest Indiana, coaching is a pretty new thing, really. And so people can have trouble seeing that it's not about the technology. And so when you get your administrators modeling, it's another way to continue that message, like, oh, that's what coaching looks like. It's not about the technology. It's about the instructional practices. And then teachers will see their leaders learning and being coached along them. And I also like to talk about how coaching is not remedial. And so I think if you can get your admins on board with showing that coaching is for everyone, it's for your high flyers, it's for your leaders, it's for everyone, then it becomes something that's not necessarily seen as a remedial process. Administrators, they might also not know exactly what tech integration goals to set for themselves. They don't have a classroom of their own. So I like to spend a lot of time learning the style of the administrator and maintain a pulse on the building, and this is true for coaching teachers as well. Instead of just blasting out ideas, tailoring your suggestions to the specific person, and people are a lot more willing to try something new with you if you've been paying attention to them. And also show that you're a servant leader and you are willing to work with them. So a conversation might be like, hey, I think your yearly meeting on teacher evals could be a great topic to try flip staff meeting. So I'll show you a couple of tools. Oh, and hey, this first time, I'll edit the video for you. And if you like flipping your staff meetings, what we can do next is take a look at some video editing software. Some other things I've suggested for admin is some different innovative ways to keep track of PGP points in a way that makes their life easier, and model badging for teachers. So definitely pay attention to what you can offer the specific administrator so that it doesn't come across as something that's making more work for them, but something that's really tailored to their own style and their own needs. Next slide. Having that strong partnership with building level administrators and those strong relationships with everyone in the district in general will benefit you as your role in a coach too. If building admins believe in what you're doing and they trust you, they will support your project. So keep talking about your goals so that your message as a coach can be heard. Talk about copyright, digital citizenship, tools, and watch your building administrators start to use them. These topics will start to bleed into what is happening on a day-to-day basis at the building level. So that shared vision, the teamwork, supporting admin and modeling, all of this stuff really goes a long way to help everyone see tech as part of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis rather than another thing to worry about. And then we also have to think about time. I know I'm running out of time right now, but time, that's always our biggest hurdle. And sometimes when coaches work with teachers on larger initiatives, whether it's Hour of Code or maker spaces or integrating digital citizenship into the curriculum, teachers and administrators are always giving up classroom time or giving up convocation time to make some of these things happen. And so if you have that strong partnership with your building leaders and they believe in what you're doing and they understand the work that you're doing, they're much more likely to be flexible and creative in finding ways for you to make those things happen with your teachers. And then finally, one more slide, ending on the most important thing in coaching, like Kyle said, and it's the relationship. So everything I've talked about here today comes back to relationships. Teachers and administrators alike have to trust you, and they have to know that you're there to support and be a servant leader, because your role is to make everyone want to innovate, not just innovate, but want to innovate. And bottom line, the most important thing out of this whole message that I have for today is that having a strong positive relationship with the building leaders, it impacts your relationship that you have with teachers as a coach. So any building administrator will tell you that that position can be a lonely position at times. And you know, I'll speak for the coach community. I definitely feel sometimes the same about the coaching role. It can be a lonely position, especially if you are bouncing around among all the buildings. So if you show your administrators that you care about their school, not only in what you're doing as a coach, but also as a larger community, connect with the community by showing up. I try to give myself a goal of getting to other events. So if the school is doing like a school play or a basketball game, I try really hard to get out there and make myself visible to the whole school and larger community. And I also rely on my building administrators for a lot. I take advantage of their willingness to share their challenges and their experiences, because being an educator is crazy. It's awesome, but it's crazy and it's high paced. And you have to have people around you that support you and support what you do. We all have those days where we might feel like we're not making a difference, but we have to be there for each other. And if you build those positive relationships with administrators and teachers, everyone in the end will be supported, and that includes you. All right, I went 2 minutes over. So we don't have a lot of time for questions. Mary, are we going to open this up for questions?
Well, we can. If there's anybody who has any questions that are lingering, I haven't seen any that didn't get answered, so I can give everybody just a minute or two if anything has come about. But I want to just say a quick thank you to all 4 of our presenters. That was so much great information, a lot of things that I heard that I hadn't thought of before. And, you know, a theme that I heard over and over again was modeling. What you guys as coaches are doing with your teachers is modeling what your teachers could and hopefully should be doing, taking back to their classrooms and doing with their students. So I just really want to thank you for taking the time to, to create this presentation, first of all, which, Diana, it was really cool. And then taking the time today to join us. So Michele did just share a link to the Google Coach community. And so if you are not already a member of that community, or if you are in a coaching role at your school, either a full-time coach or a teacher who is kind of in that role also, please join that community. It's a great network of professional coaches who are just, you know, it's a new job. Like Diana said, it's new in that area. It's new in a lot of areas. So y'all are learning as you go, and definitely use the experiences and the expertise of your fellow coaches around the state. So I don't see any questions coming. I see. Oh, will the recorded presentation be linked to? I will share it in the coach community, definitely. Like I said, it typically takes me a few days to get it back, to get the raw file back, and then I play with it a little bit. So it's typically about a week. So I should have that online early next week. So I will definitely share a link to it in the coach community. So lots of tweets about the webinar and eLearning too. Awesome. So it's being talked about. So excellent. Well, again, thank you to the 4 presenters, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. And definitely get in contact with each other on Twitter and in the coach community. And hopefully we will see you all sometime soon in another eLearning Lab webinar. Thanks, and have a great night.